Have you ever felt it? That invisible current? That subtle pressure against the very architecture of your resolve? A gaze that lingers a moment too long? A question posed with an almost surgical precision, not to elicit information, but to gauge the strength of your spine. What if these moments, these seemingly random encounters, are not accidents of fate, but echoes of a primordial script, a timeless test whispered into the feminine instinct, a cold, unblinking assessment of your capacity to stand? Dismiss the saccharine tales of courtship, the flimsy constructs of romantic fantasy that crumble under the first genuine tremor of adversity. We speak now of a more ancient, a more elemental force, the forge where true metal is not merely displayed but demanded. Imagine a chasm, not of malice, but of profound instinctual necessity, a silent, relentless inquiry into the substance of your masculine will. Are you built of the granite that endures, or the sandstone that erodes with first relentless tide? This is no parlor game, no fleeting caprice. It is a subterranean river, carving its path through the bedrock of human becoming, a dynamic older than any civilization, more fundamental than any spoken law. What if this persistent, often unconscious probing is the very crucible in which authentic strength is either tempered into steel or exposed as brittle artifice? How many have mistaken this profound examination for mere cruelty, for a lack of love, and in doing so fled from the very fire that could have forged them? Consider the eagle, how it tests the wind, the mountain, how it tests the climber. Could it be that the feminine, in its most untamed and discerning essence, is not seeking a master nor a servant, but a force that meets its own with an unwavering, self-possessed power, a will that does not bend under the weight of expectation, nor shatter at the first sign of the storm, but instead learns to dance with the tempest itself, finding its own formidable rhythm. Tonight, we do not offer comfort nor easy answers that dissolve like mist. We offer a lens, ground from the hardest truths, to dissect this ancient, often misunderstood imperative. We shall delve into Nietzsche's own unsparing analysis of this feminine need to test, to provoke, to know the untamed spirit of man. For only by understanding this cold fire, this relentless sculptor of wills, can one hope to meet it not with fear, but with the unwavering gaze of one who is, finally, awake. And so, you have lingered, drawn by a resonance deeper than mere curiosity, perhaps a whisper of recognition from the untamed landscapes within. You feel that chilling draft, the one that precedes the storm, the one that speaks of truths we have learned to swaddle in comforting lies. Let us now strip away these threadbare comforts, shall we, and gaze upon the unadorned machinery of this primal dance, this relentless crucible. For what is this testing, this feminine probing that so often bewilders and unnerves, if not life itself seeking its own affirmation, its own escalation, its own will to power, made manifest through the subtle yet unyielding gaze of another? Forget for a moment the language of sentiment, the fragile vows exchanged under fleeting moons, and consider instead the bedrock of instinct. Is it not a search for bedrock itself? A deep, almost geological sounding for foundations that will not crumble when the earth inevitably quakes? This perceived coldness in the analysis is not a lack of feeling, but the stark clarity of vision required to see past the ephemeral, to discern the enduring structure beneath the ornamentation of emotion. Imagine a sculptor, not with gentle hands but with a hammer and chisel, chipping away at all that is superfluous, all that is weak and unformed. Does the marble cry out at the pain of becoming? Perhaps. Yet what emerges is form, is strength, is the artist's vision imposed upon the raw. Could this testing then be an unconscious artistry, a relentless drive to sculpt, to reveal the inherent form, or to expose the lack thereof in the masculine spirit? How often has this drive been mislabeled, condemned as capricious or worse, as a flaw in the feminine character, rather than understood as a fundamental, albeit often unconscious, imperative? It is easier, is it not, to cast blame than to look. Into the mirror this test provides a mirror that reflects not her desires alone, but the current state of your own sovereign will. What terrors, what uncertainties does that reflection hold that you would rather shatter the mirror than examine the image? This is no plea for absolution, nor an indictment. It is an excavation, a descent into the catacombs where the oldest laws are etched. The female, in this dynamic, becomes an unwitting guardian of a certain vital fire, a gatekeeper who poses riddles not of intellect, but of being. Her questions, spoken or unspoken, are not, "What do you know?" or "What do you possess?" but the far more terrifying, "Who are you when stripped of all pretense?" And in that raw space where titles and trophies offer no shield, what is laid bare? Is it the resilience of the oak, deeply rooted, that bends in the storm but does not break? Or is it the hollow reed, swaying with every passing breeze, offering no true anchor, no unyielding center? This instinct, so often misunderstood, is a primal yearning for that which endures, for a will that meets the chaos of existence not with collapse, but with a defiant affirmation. Consider the tightrope walker, poised above the abyss. Does the rope test him? Does the abyss beckon with malicious intent? Or are they merely the conditions, the stark realities against which his skill, his courage, his entire being is measured and revealed? This feminine testing, in its most profound sense, is the abyss and the rope, demanding not foolhardy leaps, but the disciplined grace of authentic strength. And what of the pain it inflicts, the insecurity it unearths? Ah, pain. The great teacher, the unwelcome guest who often brings the most profound gifts. Is it not in these moments of internal friction, these points of psychic stress, that the contours of our own limitations and the burning desire to transcend them become most sharply defined? The comfort of the valley breeds complacency. It is the harsh ascent that forges the climber. This is not about a battle of sexes, a vulgar contest for dominance. Such interpretations belong to the marketplace of superficial ideas. No, this is about the currents of life itself, the relentless, filtering process that discards the hesitant and elevates the resolute. The female, often unknowingly, becomes an agent of this current, her instincts honed to detect the subtle vibrations of inner fortitude or its conspicuous absence. Think of the ancient mariner, who seeks not a placid harbor always, but a vessel, capable of weathering the most monstrous waves. Is her scrutiny, then, not a search for seaworthiness, a deep intuitive assessment of your capacity to navigate not just the calm lagoons of affection, but the turbulent oceans of shared existence, of unforeseen trials, of the inevitable shadows that life casts upon every path? And how many, faced with this elemental audit, retreat into bitterness, into cynicism, building walls not of strength, but of brittle resentment. They curse the storm, rather than learning to harness its winds. They see an enemy in the reflection, rather than a summons to become something more than they currently are. Is this not the ultimate evasion, the refusal of the call to one's own potential grandeur? The will to power, as Nietzsche understood it, is not mere aggression, but the fundamental drive of all things to grow, to overcome, to expand, to achieve their fullest expression. This testing, then, can be seen as a catalyst, an irritant around which the pearl of a stronger self may form. Or it can be the grain of sand that merely chafes, leading to inflammation and a turning away from the challenge. Do not mistake this for a celebration of harshness for its own sake. The coldness of the analysis is the coldness of the surgeon's blade. It cuts, yes, but it cuts to heal, to remove that which is diseased or weak, to allow for the flourishing of a more robust vitality. It is an invitation to meet life with eyes wide open, to acknowledge the often uncomfortable truths that govern our deepest interactions. And what if, within this relentless assessment, there lies a profound, unspoken respect for that which proves itself worthy? Not a fawning admiration, but the sober acknowledgement of one power recognizing another. Is there not a silent pact formed in that moment of recognized strength, a bond forged in the fires of mutual testing, that transcends the shallow affections of a less demanding world? So the question reverberates, not from her lips alone, but from the very depths of existence. Are you a bridge to a higher state, a self-overcoming force, or a cul-de-sac of comfortable stagnation? This is not a judgment passed by another, but a verdict you pronounce upon yourself through your response to these ancient, ineluctable trials of the masculine spirit. The path to understanding this is not paved with roses, but with the sharp, challenging stones of self-reflection. It demands a courage to look beyond the surface of momentary discomfort, to perceive the deeper, impersonal forces at play, and to ask oneself, what is being asked of me here, not by this woman, but by life itself, speaking through her instinctive, often ruthless clarity. And so the curtain falls, not upon an ending, but upon a silence pregnant with unspoken questions, with the resonant hum of newly struck chords within your own depths. The forge has cooled, perhaps, but the heat of its lessons, the echo of the hammer-shaping will against will, lingers still. What image now forms in the afterglow? Is it the unsettling reflection in that cold, clear mirror, or the dawning realization that the truest tests are those we set for ourselves in the silent theater of our own becoming? The landscape we have traversed together is stark, yes, stripped of comforting illusions. Yet in its raw honesty, does it not possess a terrible beauty, a clarity that both wounds and liberates? To see the mechanisms, the ancient instincts, the impersonal currents that sculpt our lives, this is not to surrender, but to finally understand the nature of the winds against which you must set your sails. What new horizons does this stark illumination reveal to your inner eye, now that the mists have momentarily parted? Remember this, the ultimate crucible is not the gaze of another, but the unflinching scrutiny of your own highest self. The whispers of the feminine instinct, the cold analysis of the will, these are but echoes of a deeper imperative, the summons to self-mastery, to carve your own values into the stone of existence. For the hammer that forges or shatters ultimately rests not in her hand, nor in Nietzsche's, but in your own. If these words have stirred something more than thought, if they have touched a place of forgotten fire or unvoiced longing, then you have heard an invitation not from me, but from that which is most authentic within you. This resonance is a sign, a tremor of recognition from a spirit that refuses to dwell in shallows. The most profound transformations are not shouted, they are breathed in the quiet after the storm. Thus, if this journey into the unsparing heart of the will has struck a resonant chord, if you feel the pull towards a deeper understanding and a more courageous existence, then let your engagement be more than a fleeting gesture. Like this exploration, comment with the truths it has unveiled for you. Share it with those who walk a similar path of rigorous self-inquiry, and subscribe not to a channel, but to the ongoing forging of your own formidable spirit. Become a conscious architect,